It was a nightmare from which she couldn't wake up. Alexis DeCanny, brutally raped, she claims, then stalked by the police sergeant she once called her boyfriend. Then, April 6th, Alexis hides out at her friend Brandon's house in a town outside of the sergeant's jurisdiction, just not far enough.
He then sends me a picture of himself outside of Brandon's house, like a selfie. And he says, I can see him in there laying on the couch. I can see him, I'm going in, I'm gonna shoot him.
The person on the couch was actually Brandon's elderly father. Both Alexis and Brandon are out of the house at the time, and Alexis drives straight to the local police department.
I demanded to see the the next person up. They kept telling me no. So finally I called Brandon. I said, call 911. They mandatorily have to send a cruiser to the address if you call 911.
911, what's your emergency?
Well, me and my friend, we've been having some issues with somebody stalking us and menacing us, sending us threatening emails and text messages.
Okay, what's going on right now?
Well, basically, he's armed and dangerous, and he's sitting out in front of the house.
I called 911 from the truck. I didn't know. I just didn't want to go home. You know, what am I going to do? Walk into a gunfight?
A gunfight, right?
You know, or walk into just getting everyone killed.
Is her boyfriend the Akron cop?
Yeah.
Or ex-boyfriend? I apologize.
How do you know?
Okay, she's still here at the police department, so nobody's actually seen this car outside of the house?
I don't know. Right now, I'm going by what she's telling me, and my dad's elderly. He's 65, 67 years old, basically confined to medical equipment. I don't need something going down.
Yeah, for sure. And you're sure that your dad is home at that address?
Yes.
Finally, police do send a cruiser to the scene and find an armed and loaded Eric Paull the next street over.
I literally fell to my knees in relief, and I was like, he'll at least get a DUI.
Something.
She's drunk, he's wasted,
Right.
if nothing else. And they never even did a field sobriety check.
They let him go?
They pink slipped him. A pink slip means that they have him evaluated by a psychiatrist or psychologist. They take him to the psych unit.
And what were the results?
He was out after a few hours. He was messaging me and threatening me from the psych unit. He still had his phone.
Thankfully, Alexis finally gets a judge to issue a temporary protection order, though getting anyone to enforce it may not be so easy.
He pretty much immediately began trying to contact me via email. When I read it and I found it, I immediately called and said, this is what he did. He violated my protection order, you know, and she's like, okay, good to know.
How many times did he violate that protection order? 4 times? What happened on the 4th time that really got everyone's attention?
I texted the detective, I got smart and I said, well, if I have a written document that I am informing her, and I said, this is the 4th time he has violated my protection order. Is it irrelevant? Does it not matter?
And what did she say?
Nothing, and then he was arrested that day.
Brought in by his own brothers in blue.
City versus Eric Paull.
Why do you think it was so difficult for Alexis to get the proper attention from law enforcement in this case?
Because it's so hard to believe. We are trained to respect authority, and we do expect our law enforcement officers to be good people. And when an allegation such as this, so outrageous of conduct from an officer, surfaces, it is a very hard pill to understand and swallow.
But it turns out one of the hardest pills to swallow was still to come.
I received a phone call from one of the detectives. I remember she said, I'm gonna need you to sit down for what I'm about to tell you. And she said, there are hundreds of other victims. Hundreds.
While Crime Watch Daily couldn't verify if the number of victims was actually in the hundreds, there is no doubt that Eric Paull did prey on scores of other women.
We really take a deep look into the rabbit hole we call the mind of Eric Paull here, and you find out how demented and sick he was. He had a penchant for adult and female entertainers.
I was informed that he was at a strip club at least 5 times a week, that he was following other women around, that he was harassing them.
He actually went into what's called OLEG, which is a gateway that we have in the state of Ohio. What it enables them to do is find out basic information. And what we found with him is that on dozens and dozens and dozens of times, he was going in using that for his own purpose, nothing to do with law enforcement.
A felony in the state of Ohio.
So we charged him, and he pled guilty to 3 separate counts of misusing what we call OLEG, this gateway, and really abusing the trust that every police officer has.
Sure, they're upset and embarrassed.
In addition to those charges, Eric Paull pled guilty to 1 count of menacing by stalking and another for violating a protection order against Alexis. But on the most serious allegation, that brutal Thanksgiving Day rape and strangulation,
she never filed any complaints or said anything to anyone about that incident when it originally occurred. I think that ultimately led to that charge being reduced or amended down to an aggravated assault. Mr. Paull has always disputed that there was any kind of a sexual assault, and I would note that there was never any type of sexual assault charges ever filed against Mr. Paull in connection with this case.
The rape was never indicted. So the message that's being sent to her is that it's your fault, somehow, some way, that you were brutally raped.
Though the Ohio Attorney General's office asked for the maximum of 9 years, Eric Paull was sentenced to 4 years on 6 counts, eligible for judicial release in just 6 months. If he's not released, he will serve the entire 4 years. But that's cold comfort to Alexis and her team.
Stalking and menacing could not even begin to express the level of torment I had to experience and endure.
The length of the sentence is certainly inadequate for rape. What we would like to see happen is the department take ownership and accept responsibility and say, hey, we have done wrong by you, and we're now going to protect and serve you and try to rebuild and restore trust in you. That is what we would like to see.
Though we reached out to Akron Police for comment, they have yet to return our calls. However things shake out, Eric Paull will never again be allowed to wear a police badge. But for Alexis DeCanny, it's a small trade for the pain she's endured.
Do you fear for your safety right now?
Yeah. Yes.
Right this minute, even though he's locked up in solitary confinement. Mm-hmm. So if you fear for your safety now, what happens when he gets out?
It's a very scary thought.
At sentencing, Paull, who is also the father to 2 teenage girls, apologized to Alexis, his family, and the Akron Police Department, claiming his divorce from his wife of more than 20 years sent him into a downward spiral.
Well, Michelle, there are many people grappling with the challenges of divorce in this country, but very few people react in this way. It is also, to me, just shocking that this guy only received 4 years in prison and could be out in just months. So now we want to hear from you. Do you think Eric Paull got too little prison time for what he did? Or did justice get served? You can sound off right now at our Facebook page.